How will history remember George H.W. Bush? This question is not as straightforward as it may seem, for to truly understand Bush's legacy, one must delve into the rich tapestry of his life and career. From his early years, through his presidential tenure, to his post-presidential activities, every phase of his life has a story to tell. Born into a well-established family in Milton, Massachusetts in the summer of 1924, George Herbert Walker Bush was a child of privilege. Yet his life was not one of idleness. He was raised in Greenwich, Connecticut, and later attended the prestigious Phillips Academy. When World War II broke out, he served as a pilot in the United States Navy Reserve. After the war, he graduated from Yale and headed to West Texas, where he established a successful oil company. Politics beckoned in the mid-60s. Despite an unsuccessful run for the United States Senate in 1964, he was elected to represent Texas's 7th congressional district 2 years later. His political star continued to rise when President Richard Nixon appointed him as the ambassador to the United Nations in 1971, and later as chairman of the Republican National Committee in 1973. His journey in public service continued under President Gerald Ford, who appointed him as the chief of the liaison office to the People's Republic of China and later as the director of Central Intelligence. Although Bush ran for president in 1980, he was defeated in the Republican presidential primaries by Ronald Reagan. However, Reagan saw value in Bush and selected him as his vice presidential running mate. 8 years later, in the 1988 presidential election, Bush finally claimed the presidency, defeating Democrat Michael Dukakis. His presidency was largely driven by foreign policy, navigating the final years of the Cold War, and playing a significant role in the reunification of Germany. He presided over the invasion of Panama and the Gulf War, ending the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait in the latter conflict. On the domestic front, he broke a 1988 campaign promise by enacting legislation to raise taxes, a move aimed at reducing the budget deficit. He also championed and signed 3 significant pieces of bipartisan legislation: the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Immigration Act, and the Clean Air Act amendments. However, the 1992 presidential election saw Bush lose to Democrat Bill Clinton, a loss attributed to an economic recession, his turnaround on his tax promise, and the increased emphasis of foreign policy in a post-Cold War political climate. After leaving office in 1993, Bush did not retreat from public life. He remained active in humanitarian activities, often working alongside his former political rival Bill Clinton. His legacy also continued through his family, with his son George W. Bush winning the presidency in 2000, making them the second father-son pair to serve as the nation's president. So how will history remember George H.W. Bush? As an above-average president, as most historians suggest? Or as a man who dedicated his life to public service, strived for bipartisan solutions, and navigated America through a significant period in global history? The answer, of course, depends on how one chooses to look at the multifaceted life he led.